Hey there, Breakfast Club. I'm Peach, and it's Sunday. First off, welcome Wayne Watley, who has replaced Sketchy White Dew for Fridays. I'm sorry to see Sketchy go. I really enjoyed his videos, but he has other priorities now. By the way, if you hear like this weird purring sound, that is my cat Darwin. He is a very loud purr, and he's laying right next to me. At any rate, this past Friday was Wayne's first video, which also happened to be his week to lead the topic, and that topic is Gnosticism. That is the claim to know whether or not gods exist. To sum up his background, he is a former pastor and faith healer who has renounced Christianity while retaining his theism. And I have to say that it is so refreshing to have someone a little different on the lineup. Too much agreement is the cornerstone for creating an echo chamber. Before I begin addressing Wayne's video, I should offer a little background of my own for those of you who aren't very familiar with me. I'm a lifelong atheist. I've never believed in any gods or anything supernatural. Not seriously, anyway. When I was very young, it was easy for me to believe in things that go bump in the night, but I chalk much of that up to a healthy imagination and being a child. I didn't give very much thought to the God question until I was in my early 20s, and when I finally did, it seemed pretty obvious to me that people were playing make-believe and had been indoctrinated to take that nonsense seriously.
So you may wonder, why do you believe in God? Well, besides the fact that I'm self-aware enough to know that the idea of no God really depresses me. I mean, it would really feel like I was losing a friend or family member if I buried God or the idea of a God at this point.
So I want to start off with this statement because it strikes me as odd that you flatly state that you are self-aware enough to know that you believe in a God because you really want it to be true. But at the same time, you seem to completely miss that this is an obvious act of self-delusion and wishful thinking, which has never made anything real. Again, as someone who has never been a theist, I can't understand how anyone could hold such a position in spite of themselves. At the same time, I understand that this is where a lot of former theists reportedly start, before they realize that they can't force themselves to believe the unbelievable.
The other reason is no one knows if God is real or not. I mean, we have Gnostic theists, agnostic theists, agnostic atheists, and Gnostic atheists. And I am of the persuasion personally that Gnostic theists and Gnostic atheists are just as real as unicorns. Gnostic simply means knowledge. I'm talking about having knowledge that there is or is no God. We don't know. None of us know.
Well, that depends. Which God are you talking about? If you're talking about the God described in the Bible, then I would say that I'm quite confident in stating that I know that one doesn't exist. Humans have long since figured out that the universe wasn't created in 6 days, that our earth doesn't have corners or has a firmament above it, that humans are not made out of dirt, that animals can't talk, that there was never a worldwide flood, that Israelites were never in Egypt as slaves, and basically everything else that the Bible describes that particular God as having done. If you're referring to some creator deity that has evidently removed itself from interfering with the universe, then I would have to say that I don't know if such a God exists, nor does it really matter. At the end of the day, the only thing we have to go on is our standards of evidence, and the God question has never been answered with sufficient enough evidence for me to even entertain the thought that any God is real.
I have faith that a God exists, but I also have doubt. Doubt is not the enemy of faith. It actually helps us on our journey.
How is that possible? Faith is belief without evidence, or in spite of evidence to the contrary. Doubt is what occurs when your rational mind recognizes irregularities in fantastical claims that either seem to be or are definitely unlikely to be true, such as The existence of an almighty creator of time, space, and the infinite universe actually caring about the personal lives and feelings of one particular species out of 8.7 million species on one tiny planet out of 100 billion planets in our Milky Way galaxy alone, out of the 170 billion known galaxies in the observable universe. When you break it down, it really just sounds absurd, doesn't it?
I also have an issue with those who say, quote, 100% without a shadow of a doubt there is no God, end quote. Now, to be honest, I don't really know anyone who says this. I only hear about these people mainly from other Christians, but if you exist, please make yourself known. I would love to pick your brain.
I have never heard anyone say those words seriously, and the fact that you state you only hear about such people from Christians leads me to conclude that this is an archetype that really doesn't exist. Generally speaking, atheists tend not to make wholesale claims when it comes to the God question. And that's because gods, especially the God of the Bible, are unfalsifiable. If you notice, gods never materialize. They don't seem to exist in the natural physical world where their existence can be tested. They don't manifest in anything other than symbolism and feelings. And it's all but totally impossible to communicate with such beings except for telepathy. With such characteristics applied, it's not possible to prove or disprove that these beings exist. I would go further to say that these characteristics are the qualities of nothing, but given that gods are unfalsifiable, most thinking atheists have no reason to make any positive claims about them because the burden of proof is on those who claim that such beings are real.
So since none of us know whether God is real or is not real, I tend to believe in a God right now. I know I'm invoking the, quote, God of the gaps, but don't we either invoke the God of the gaps or the non-God of the gaps anyway until we have a major scientific breakthrough? No one can really explain abiogenesis. Science really does not lend an answer to the origin of existence.
From what you're saying, it sounds like you assume that science yields to God did it until they discover the actual mechanism for natural phenomena. Which kind of sounds like you already know that God never does it. But your assertion only works if you're starting with the presupposition that belief in a God is the default position, when it's not. Science doesn't begin with presuppositions, it begins with questions. And nobody starts out believing in a God, people are taught to believe. The default position is neither believing nor actively disbelieving, but having no belief. And as for the unknowns in science, can you point out any specific example of science answering an unknown with God did it? Does science know what caused abiogenesis? Not yet. And right now, that's the correct answer. We don't know yet. It's never been, we don't know, therefore God.
People have faith that God is real, or faith that God is not real because we all have to choose to believe in something that no one has witnessed, such as the genesis of this existence.
No. Again, faith is belief without evidence or in spite of evidence. Atheists do not have faith that gods aren't real. We have rejected claims of gods due to lack of sufficient evidence. That's not to say that we'll just make flat assertions such as God is not real. We just don't see any reason to believe that gods are real. And speaking only for myself, I can't choose to believe in something. I either do because I've been convinced by the evidence presented, or I don't because I haven't been convinced. And unless you're going to claim that every single god that humans have reportedly worshipped since the dawn of humanity are real, then you too hold that position for all of those other gods. The only difference between you and me is that I apply that standard to one more god, yours. Well, that was fun. I feel like I've time warped back to 2009 when I first started here on YouTube. You should add this one to your playlist, Peter. Well, that's all from me today. Be sure to subscribe to the Breakfast Club channel if you haven't already. Give this video a thumbs up, and I will see you all here next Sunday. Paul, you are up next, and we will see you tomorrow.